disruptive.
America that I fought for.
Weird thing to happen. Hello, one and all. Welcome to this edition of Kitz Corner. Been a fantastic day so far. So there's another showdown, throwdown, ladies and gentlemen, on Israel's genocide that's continuing in Gaza and the U.S. supporting it. There's another throwdown we have seen with Destiny and Norman Finkelstein. We have seen with Ben Shapiro versus Candace Owens. That, chaotic event. But now we're introducing Megyn Kelly and Glenn Greenwald into the ring. These are two critically acclaimed kind of professional journalists. Megyn Kelly, kind of sketchy on the term journalist, but we'll give her the benefit of the doubt. So Glenn Greenwald went on to her show, which is a Sirius XM show, so I guess it's like a radio podcast show. He tweets this out. He says, I was on my friend Megyn Kelly's show today. We explored our differences on U.S. support for Israel, Iran, the causes of anti-American hatred, and U.S. foreign policy generally. We have a spirited and conscientious but civil and constructive debate. Always good when that happens. Well, it definitely looked like a decentable debate. Glenn Greenwald isn't the kind of person that would scream or interrupt, or he's very kind of collective when it comes to being a good debater or whatnot. He's not gonna override that factor, but we'll see how this goes because there's a lot of interesting takes to this. Watch this.
Israel is a nuclear power. They have an arsenal of nuclear weapons. They have one of the most sophisticated militaries in the world. They have a thriving economy. They have the Middle East, Silicon Valley. Why can't Israel take care of itself? Why can't Israel pay for its own wars? I think that's a big question. And when we tie ourselves to Israel, it does harm American interests in all sorts of ways. The potential to be dragged into another Middle East war is obviously significant, but also the anger and hatred toward Israel gets directed at the United States as well.
All right, but let me ask you about that one. I get that, and I see that point, but I also feel like, Glenn, they hate us. They hate, like the Iranian, not the Iranian people, but like the leaders over in Iran. They're going to hate us less if we don't back Israel. I don't buy it. Hell no. They hate us because of...
Okay. There's so many things wrong with this debate. There's so many things that is wrong with just this perspective here. I mean, Glenn Greenwald is a journalist, and you're saying you don't buy it. Like, Glenn Greenwald is not a car salesman, okay? He's not trying to sell you a lemon with the idea of, oh my God, the United States has aided Israel for 4 decades. No, that's a fact. Glenn Greenwald is a journalist, and you're saying you don't buy it. What is there to buy? What is there to buy? He's not, like, giving you a conspiracy theory. It's known fact. That's why AIPAC exists. That's why we have lobby groups. That's why for decades, not just years, but decades, the United States bolstered the settlement of Israel for decades. As Robert F. Kennedy Jr. even says, Israel is our aircraft carrier. And it really is, because it's a giant military base. They extend militarily and be the eyes and ears and surveillance for the Middle Eastern countries that we also want to invade. Like Iran, like Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, Lebanon. Isn't it interesting that they both share the same enemies, both America and Israel? Could that be why they're such great allies? Oh, but it's very, very telling. You have a very convincing rebuttal when you do the eye roll. You saw that there. Megyn Kelly doing the eye roll where it's like, come on, Glenn. Come on. You're going to tell me that they don't hate us? Like, come on. Let me go back to that. That's hilarious.
Significant, but also the anger and hatred toward Israel gets directed at the United States as well.
All right, but let me ask you about that one. I get that, and I see that point, but I also feel like, Glenn, They hate us. They hate
Man.
like the Iranian, not the Iranian people, but like the leaders over in Iran. They're going to hate us less if we don't back Israel.
You mean the Iranian leaders that we installed when we overthrew the democratically elected government in the 50s? You know, those kind of leaders, the United States that backed the idea of this dictatorship that overpowered. Yeah, we hate those leaders. Not the Iranian people, but we want to massacre them as much as possible, which is why we're giving a slush fund of money to Israel to do our dirty work. We don't hate the people, but come on, they hate us. Come on. They hate us. I wonder why that is, Megyn. Why is it that Iran hates us? Why does Iraq hate us? Why does Afghanistan hate? Why does majority of the world have criticism of the United States of America and their foreign policy? Why do they have judgment and harsh judgment when they intervene in other countries? God, I guess they just hate the American way of life. You know, bomb first, ask questions later. I just don't buy it. Holy crap.
I don't buy it. Hell no. They hate us because of our principles, because of our Constitution, because of the way we live, because women walk around in tank tops. We could go down the list, but it's not going to go away if we stop supporting Israel.
Yeah, that's why. That's why. The Middle East hates us because women are prancing around in tank tops on the beach. I don't know, maybe all the years of blowing up their countries and their communities and slaughtering, you know, mass murdering children, families all across different nations for the last 20 plus years. That doesn't clue in as a factor of why they hate us. And also the fact that we're backing the arch enemy, which is Israel. Does that not clue into your skepticism there? Does that not clue in, Megyn Kelly? Come on. I just don't buy it.
Megyn, this was the debate about 9/11. Like, why did they hate us? Why did they attack us? And the neocon narrative was, oh, they hate us for our freedoms. And bin Laden repeatedly said, there was that letter that recirculated that was banned from TikTok. We are angry at America because they are constantly insinuating themselves into our region. They imposed a sanctions regime on Iraq that killed hundreds of thousands of Iraqi children. They put troops on Saudi soil. The reason Iran hates us, and I'm not justifying it at all, but I think it's very important to have an open eyes about your own country, is that in 1954, we overthrew their democratically elected government, the CIA did, and we imposed on them for the next 25 years one of the most savage and brutal dictatorships in the world, the Shah of Iran. And so when Iran had its revolution and finally deposed their dictator, the Shah of Iran, of course they knew the United States was responsible for his imposition on them for all those decades. And so they had a lot of animosity toward the United States. There are all kinds of countries in the world, Korea and Japan and Brazil and Norway, that have all
then
the
they
same
took all our
freedoms as we
hostages.
do.
Yeah, but Glenn, I mean, you're looking at a country, Israel.
Yeah, but Glenn, stop bringing up facts. Like, just, I don't buy it, okay? They hate us. If you're gonna be on my show, you have to say that they hate us. That's the most American thing we can do. We've been doing it for 20 plus years. Why do you have to change it all of a sudden? Oh my God. This is, again, Megyn Kelly, you realize that you're talking to a journalist. Like, Glenn Greenwald is not dumb. Glenn Greenwald knows a thing or two. Glenn Greenwald has investigated stories like this and dug deep into these stories. He's not some random commentator like Destiny that you can easily school with just a couple buzzwords. No, this is Glenn Greenwald, a prize-winning journalist. And you're saying you don't buy the idea that the United States has been aiding Israel for decades. Hence why they have lobby groups. Hence why AIPAC funnels back into political money. That's how campaign scrutiny gets financed and politicians get elected. because they're supported by AIPAC. I mean, Ali Veshi from MSNBC even pointed that out. But what's there to buy? He's not selling you a lemon. He's stating facts. And he's bringing up an important fact that in the 1950s, we screwed up Iran. We were the ones that did it. So it seems like U.S. intervention is working perfectly since the 50s, right? That's why all these great countries just, all these countries just hate the greatness of America. They're just jealous of us. Oh my God. You gotta be so full up your own ass to still have that mindset of like 20 years ago, post 9/11, where it's us versus the world. Like everybody hates us. Everybody hates us. And if you don't agree with that, then you're probably on their side. Like, I grew up in the 20 plus years of the war on terror. Okay, we have seen the atrocities of Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and Syria and all these different nations, and nothing good came out of it. How many trillions of dollars did we waste in Afghanistan just to have the Taliban resurface again? Like how good that went. Or how we're still in Syria to back the oil. Not the people, the oil. I bet Megyn Kelly hasn't looked into that. I'm sure Megyn Kelly hasn't done any research prior to this. It's just, oh, it's Glenn Greenwald. I'm sure this guy is going to be a loon, and I can talk all smart and be like, come on, roll my eyes. Holy crap.
Israel has a sense of due process and fairness, and Iran is hanging people from cranes. Iran is stoning women to death for not wearing the damn hijab. How the hell are we going to have a relationship with them? It's a no.
Megyn, we have relationships with the most savage dictators on the planet, our close allies.
But in this instance,
Glenn Greenwald's about to say it. We have a relationship with Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia. A theocratic dictatorship that murdered one of our people. Murdered a journalist. How the hell are we friends with Saudi Arabia, and then you say that we can't befriend Iran? I say we shouldn't befriend any of them, but that's just my take. Like, it shows your utter stupidity, your hypocrisy. We're backing the worst of the worst. We're the ones installing the worst of the worst. Why? So we can dominate, take over, and screw over countries. And then guess what? They hate us for that. I wonder why that is. I don't know. Would you hate the idea if China took over, Florida? Imagine that. If China came in and stormed the beaches of, Daytona Beach, took over Florida and Alabama and, let's say, Georgia, and decided, hey, we're going to take over part of this nation and get us into... Do you think you would be kind to China afterwards? No. No. You kind of feel angered because you're defending your homeland. Holy crap. Like, this is just insane.
Saudi Arabia and our close allies in Egypt. Okay, but you have Saudi Arabia, Egypt, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, all of which are American allies that are among the most brutal and savage dictatorships in the world. We're fine with having relationships, good relationships and alliances with countries that are extremely repressive, as long as they do the bidding of the United States.
And the reason we do that is because they do our dirty work. That's the only reason. We befriend countries that do our dirty work. If they don't advance our dirty ass, disgusting agenda, then we don't care about them. They're not our allies. We just don't care. In fact, we blackmail them. We assert our dominance. We go after them if they don't do our dirty work. That's what happened to Muammar Gaddafi. That's what happened to Saddam Hussein. That's what happened to Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was an asset to the CIA prior to 9/11, who got interviewed twice on CNN and considered a friend to America, that went off to massacre people. Like, if we're going to pick and choose our allies, we're picking the worst.
One of the reasons is their hatred of Iran and vice versa. I mean, those two groups are Shiite versus Sunni, and there's a long-standing hatred between them. One of them wants to completely annihilate Israel, and one of them was actually open-minded to doing a deal with Israel and getting to a better place when we were backing Israel under Trump, when we were helping making it stronger. And these other allies, Saudi Arabia and the others, were starting to look at it like, you know what, maybe we are going to have to deal with this country. We were moving toward peace.
And tell me, Megyn, which side did the United States back? I'm curious on that. If there was two groups of Iranians, one that wanted peace and wanted to make a diplomatic deal with Israel and the rest of the world, and these other group of thugs that wanted to unite a war so that the military-industrial complex can manufacture a war and profit off a war, I wonder what the United States would back on for the past 20 years. Like, oh my God, open your eyes. If I could figure it out, a late 20-something-year-old Canadian kid in his basement doing a shoestring podcast could figure all this out just because he observed the 20-plus years of war that he's lived through, I'm sure an adequate journalist like you, Megyn Kelly, could easily figure it out. Because Glenn Greenwald is spitting out facts to you, and you're not taking it. Oh, I don't believe it. I'm not going to buy it. They just hate us. Like, it's like a childish answer. Well, why do they hate you? I don't know. They just do.
It's true. The dictators of Egypt and Saudi Arabia and the Gulf state regions understand that there can be economic benefits from a relationship with Israel. They don't represent the people of those countries. These are dictators imposed by military coups that the United States props up. And all I'm saying is we're very tribal as human beings. We always like to see things through the perspective of our side, to believe that we're the morally superior ones, we're the victims, they're the aggressors, they're evil. I understand the appeal of that narrative. But you were just talking about the multiple wars that we fought in the Middle East. We invaded Iraq and destroyed it. That strengthened Iran by strengthening the Shiite militias. Saddam Hussein was a vehement opponent of Iran. We created the vacuum out of which ISIS emerged. Even Tony Blair says that. We were in Afghanistan for 20 years. We've been bombing that region for a long time. I think on some level, we have to take some responsibility for why there's anti-American resentment in that region and ask whether that's worth it.
I agree with that. I don't disagree with you at all on that. And I'm very open-minded to, the growing strain of isolationism, for lack of a better term, in the Republican Party. And, you're not a Republican. But I mean, this country was sort of born into isolationism. That's how we were through the lead up to World War I. We didn't want anything to do with any of this. And we get sucked into these conflicts. And those two, as the T-shirt reads, back-to-back World War champions. And things have gone south for us ever since. Every war we get involved in.
Exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
I get it. And so I'm not this bellicose pro-war neocon at all. I see the value in aligning with Israel. I see how evil the Iranian regime is. And I have absolutely no tolerance for the fucking bin Laden letter. Zero.
Oh, God. It's like a roller coaster soap opera, because you just said earlier you didn't buy any of Glenn Greenwald's statements when he said America should not be aiding to Israel if Israel can defend itself. That's isolationism. That's you getting away from the war. That's not you igniting a war if you stop backing Israel. And that now you turn to the fact that, I agree with you, but I have zero tolerance for that bin Laden letter. I have zero tolerance for a diplomatic situation, and Iran's still evil. Like, it's just so crazy. It's so crazy. And I don't know if it's because, you're on Sirius XM, and obviously there's probably some war profiteering and manufacturers that are advertising on these sites. So maybe they got to do the due diligence of, hey, I got to kind of bump up this war a bit, even if I disagree, and say that I'm not a, hell-raising neocon. But let's not forget Megyn Kelly. At one point, Megyn Kelly, when she was on NBC doing a daytime talk show that was very, very short-lived for obvious reasons, Megyn Kelly once slammed Jane Fonda. Before she appeared on the show, she slammed Jane Fonda because, God forbid, an actress was speaking out against the atrocity of the Vietnam War. Even though Megyn Kelly just said that, yeah, post-World War II, we were a disaster. We invaded these countries, we had slaughtered and massacred, and we'd done nothing for ourselves. Exactly. It's the exact same playbook being presented to you at every point in turn. Which is why people like me, people like Glenn, people like other non-interventionists want this to stop. And the only way it's going to stop is that the United States pulls out of these countries, stop advancing the war machine, and defend American values for American citizens. I would say that we should have our military actually defend something and bring them back to the border, for example. Instead of invading countries and sending it overseas so we can mass slaughter individuals in countries we can't even pronounce or find on a map, how about we actually defend the land of America? There's an idea. That's probably a win-win situation for both lefties and the right. But they will never do that. Because people like Megyn Kelly have been sucked in to this vacuum of the endless war machine. And I love the hypocriticalness of when all the attention was on Ukraine. It still kind of is on Ukraine. There was Republicans and people like Megyn Kelly who were so dead set against funding the Ukraine war, which I get. I totally agree with that. I totally agree 100%. We should not have gave a dime to Ukraine because that war was completely manufactured. That was a complete atrocity done by the United States since 2014 to advance warfare against Russia, which they knew they were going to lose. They knew it was going to be a losing battle. And they sacrificed Ukraine in the process. So I agree 100% with Megyn Kelly on that. But then Israel comes around, and guess what? Now she's on the war wagon. So whether you're for Ukraine or for Israel, everybody seems to be on the war wagon on something. And if it's not those two, then, oh my God, we got to still deal with Syria. And what about Venezuela? What about the rise of socialist communism coming from Cuba? Like a CIA probe just went up your ass and started talking to you like a ventriloquist doll. But of course, like Megyn Kelly is going to roll her eyes and be like, I don't buy it. I don't buy a journalist actually stating facts and pointing out historical evidence to back those claims. And then turns around and agrees with Glenn Greenwald. What a fascinating journey that was.